When we think of ancient conquerors, one name usually echoes through history: Alexander the Great. His military genius and vast empire are legendary. But what if I told you that just as Alexander's influence was fading in the East, another colossal figure was rising from the heart of India? A man who would not only challenge the remnants of Alexander's power but would go on to build an empire even larger, more unified, and arguably more sophisticated. This is the story of Chandragupta Maurya, the Indian emperor who stared down the Greek successors and forged a new destiny for a subcontinent. Our story begins in the 4th century BCE. The Indian subcontinent was a fragmented patchwork of kingdoms and republics, known as Mahayanapadas. To the northwest, the mighty Persian Achaemenid Empire held sway over the Indus Valley. This was a land of immense wealth, deep philosophy, and simmering political rivalries. Into this volatile world, a Greek-Macedonian storm was brewing. Alexander the Great, having conquered Persia, set his sights on the fabled lands of India. In 326 BCE, he crossed the Indus River, initiating a clash of civilizations that would change the course of history forever. Alexander's campaign in India was brutal and bloody. He fought and defeated several local rulers, most famously King Paris at the Battle of the Hydaspes. But the resistance was fierce, and his army, exhausted and homesick after years of ceaseless campaigning, finally mutinied. They refused to march further east into the vast Gangetic plains. A disappointed Alexander was forced to turn back, leaving behind a power vacuum and a series of Greek governors, or satraps, to rule his newly conquered Indian territories. His invasion, though brief, had shattered the old political order and exposed the vulnerability of a divided India. It was a lesson a young, ambitious man was watching very, very closely. The exact origins of Chandragupta Maurya are shrouded in mystery, a common theme for many ancient legends. Some texts describe him as a member of the Kshatriya warrior caste, while others suggest more humble beginnings, perhaps from a peacock-taming tribe called the Mauryas. What is certain is that he was a man of extraordinary ambition and charisma. As a young man, he ended up in Taxila, a great center of learning in the ancient world. And it was here that he met the man who would become his mentor, his strategist, and the mastermind behind his imperial ambitions, Chanakya. Chanakya, also known as Kautilya, was a brilliant Brahmin scholar and political strategist. Legend has it that he was publicly insulted by the king of the powerful Nanda Empire, which dominated much of northern India from its capital, Pataliputra. Swearing revenge, Chanakya sought a worthy candidate to overthrow the arrogant Nanda dynasty. He found that candidate in the young and determined Chandragupta. Together, they formed one of the most formidable partnerships in history. Chanakya, the brains; Chandragupta, the brawn. Chanakya's political treatise, the Arthashastra, is a masterpiece of statecraft, detailing everything from military strategy and economic policy to espionage and diplomacy. It was the blueprint for an empire. With Chanakya's guidance, Chandragupta began his quest for power. He first turned his attention to the northwest, the lands Alexander had just abandoned. He systematically targeted and eliminated the Greek satraps. This wasn't just a random series of battles. It was a calculated campaign of national liberation. He rallied local forces who were resentful of foreign rule, using a mix of guerrilla tactics and conventional warfare to drive out the remaining Greek garrisons. By around 320 BCE, Chandragupta had successfully cleansed the northwest of Macedonian control, unifying the region under his command. He had avenged the invasion and established himself as a formidable new power on the Indian frontier. But this was only the beginning. His real target lay to the east, the massive, wealthy, and deeply unpopular Nanda Empire. The Nanda dynasty, while powerful, was known for its tyranny and oppressive taxes. Chandragupta and Chanakya capitalized on this public discontent. Gathering a large army, which some sources claim grew to hundreds of thousands of soldiers, Chandragupta marched on the Nanda capital, Pataliputra. The campaign was arduous. Early attempts failed, but Chanakya's strategies and Chandragupta's military leadership eventually prevailed. In a decisive and bloody conflict, they overthrew the last Nanda king, Dhanananda. Around 321 BCE, Chandragupta Maurya ascended the throne in Pataliputra, marking the official beginning of the Mauryan Empire, the first ever pan-Indian empire. Now, let's circle back to the Greeks. While Chandragupta was consolidating his new empire, Alexander's own vast domain was being torn apart by his generals, the Diadochi, in a series of civil wars. The most successful of these generals in the east was Seleucus I Nicator. He established the Seleucid Empire, which stretched from modern-day Turkey to the borders of India. Seeking to reclaim Alexander's lost Indian provinces, Seleucus marched east with a massive army. Around 305 BC, he crossed the Indus, intending to put this upstart Indian king in his place. What he found was not a collection of warring states, but a unified, colossal military machine led by an emperor who had already defeated his Greek predecessors. The Seleucid-Mauryan War was a momentous showdown. This was not a local king resisting a foreign invader. This was a battle of empires, a clash between the heir of Alexander and the architect of a new Indian superpower. Unfortunately, historical accounts of the actual battles are scarce, but the outcome speaks volumes. The war ended not with a Greek victory, but with a peace treaty heavily in Chandragupta's favor. Seleucus ceded vast territories to Chandragupta, including the regions of Arya, Arcosia, and Gedrosia, essentially most of modern-day Afghanistan and parts of Pakistan. These were lands the Greeks had fought hard to conquer. In return, Chandragupta gifted Seleucus 500 war elephants. This might seem like a strange trade, but these elephants were the tanks of the ancient world, and they would prove decisive for Seleucus in his later battles against his rivals in the west. To seal the alliance, a marriage agreement was made, possibly between Seleucus's daughter and Chandragupta. Seleucus also sent an ambassador, Megasthenes, to the Mauryan court in Pataliputra. The message was clear: the Mauryan Empire was not just a regional power. It was a global superpower, and equal to the Hellenistic kingdoms. Chandragupta hadn't just defeated Alexander's legacy, he had absorbed it and made it his own. The empire Chandragupta built was staggering in its scale and organization. At its peak, it stretched from the Hindu Kush Mountains in the west to the Brahmaputra River in the east, and from the Himalayas in the north down to the Deccan Plateau in the south. It was one of the largest empires of its time. And it wasn't just big, it was brilliantly administered. Following the principles of Chanakya's Arthashastra, Chandragupta established a highly centralized bureaucracy. The empire was divided into provinces, each governed by a royal prince or official. There was a vast network of spies to report on dissent, a standing army to maintain order, and a sophisticated system of taxation and revenue collection to fund it all. Megasthenes, the Greek ambassador, wrote a detailed account called Etika. Although much of it is lost, surviving fragments paint a picture of a prosperous, well-organized, and magnificent society. He described Pataliputra as a sprawling, beautiful city larger and more impressive than any in the Greek world, protected by massive wooden walls with 570 towers and 64 gates. Chandragupta's reign was one of peace, prosperity, and unification after centuries of conflict. He built infrastructure, including roads and irrigation systems, which boosted trade and agriculture. For the first time, a vast and diverse subcontinent was united under a single, stable, and powerful administration. But the story of this incredible emperor has an equally incredible ending. After ruling for about 24 years, at the height of his power, Chandragupta did something almost unheard of for a conqueror. According to Jain tradition, he grew weary of power and violence. He abdicated his throne, handing the empire over to his son, Bindusara. He then renounced all worldly possessions and became a Jain monk, following the ascetic teacher Bhadrabahu to southern India. There, in a place called Shravanabelagola, it is said that he ended his life by practicing Salakana, a Jain ritual of fasting to death, a final act of ultimate self-control and spiritual liberation. From a mysterious youth to a continental emperor who challenged the might of the Greeks, and finally to a humble monk, Chandragupta Maurya's life is a truly epic saga. While Alexander the Great's fame spread far and wide, Chandragupta's legacy was arguably more enduring for India. He laid the foundation for a unified nation, a concept that would echo through millennia. His grandson, Ashoka the Great, would later expand upon this legacy, not through conquest, but through the promotion of peace and Buddhism. So, the next time you hear the name Alexander the Great, remember the Indian conqueror who rose from obscurity, drove out his successors, and built an empire that rivaled, and in many ways surpassed, his own. Remember Chandragupta Maurya, the unifier of India and the true emperor of the East. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next journey into history. Let me know in the comments who you think was the greater ruler, Alexander or Chandragupta. See you next time.